Welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another fantastic day to speak to a beautiful, playful woman who has taken her breath work to the next level to actually help herself in the first instance to work through her trauma, and who's now teaching others to see the path forward, to see the light, to give hope, to go out there and to heal. And there are so many different ways how we trauma survivors are dealing with our tragedies, and it is today I want to explore Gunjani's methods and listen to her story to figure out what can we learn from her. So Gunjani Patel Oza, it's lovely to have you on my show. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so honored to be here and be available to your audience to speak about some of the things that I've been sort of, working on in the past few months, and in the process of rebranding, being able to speak about this in this moment is just so amazing and aligned. So thank you so much for this.
And you're already alluding to the fact that you're rebranding, and I guess that's a matter of fact, because we are on a path. So once you've crawled out of your own darkness, you start constantly reinventing yourself. Yes. Because just as much as you have got so many different layers of trauma that you're peeling back and need to deal with, there's also so many different layers of healing. And it is something makes sense for a little while, and then you have dealt with that trauma and you move on to the next thing and you explore new paths, and often in response to something either new or something old that has come up. So it's amazing. So we are exactly the same there. I feel already that vibe. But let's go a little bit back to the start. When you were a young girl, you were certainly not waking up one day and running into mummy's bedroom saying, "Mummy, mummy, mummy, I want to be a transformation coach. I want to help people how to heal." Yeah, no. What did you want to be when you were a girl?
Oh, wow. That's an intense question for my story. The reason I say that is because I've done a lot of work and healing work around that. So when I was growing up, I grew up as a South Asian, so I identify as East Asian Indian. And in the Indian culture, it's like there are two running questions in the household in my generation. Things are changing now, which I'm very thankful for. But back then, it was just like either you are a doctor or you are an engineer. If you're identifying as male, you are an engineer most of the time, or you're a doctor. I mean, it's a given. Like, there's no okay, if you're doing well in school, then those are the paths, so to speak. So my path was supposed to be a doctor, and then stuff happened, and it didn't end up being a doctor. I am a licensed mental health therapist who is a trauma therapist at this point, so I'm sort of semi or pseudo doctor, but I don't have my PhD, so I'll just stick to, I'm a licensed mental health therapist. But so I grew up wanting to help people. I grew up wanting to, somehow be in the hospital setting, impacting people. So my college started out.
That was what you wanted to do, or that was what you were expected to do? Oh, okay, cool.
Both. I was expected to be a doctor, but then I loved the idea of being able to help people. And I think that's one of the reasons that was the career trajectory that I ended up in, that I, right before one of the most, Indian education system is designed very differently than the American education system. And here things are quite different. But I guess for me, and now at this point, being a neuroscience nerd, this is a neuroscience tidbit for you people. The prefrontal part of our brain, which is the moral reasoning, the judgment, the decision, the logistics, the language, the typing, accounting part of your brain, it doesn't completely develop till we're 27 years old. So to be able to ask to make a decision about your life, where are you going to be when you grow up at 16, is quite ridiculous to me. But that's that. I'm not going to go on a school tangent over here.
Agreed.
But, that's what happened. And then I'm like, wow, okay, if I'm not a doctor and I just got 3-degree burn and I had to take 2 months off right before some of the most important exams of my life that was going to determine my career trajectory. That clearly was a huge fail. And my parents were not overtly, so to speak, disappointed, but I was disappointed in myself. And in Indian culture, we don't talk about emotions. So, and I think here too, most of my trauma people, we don't talk about emotions. I mean, and that's something that I'm so excited that I can't wait to share towards the end of our story. But, I wish I was taught how to, or communicated to, or taught how to deal with sadness. I wish I was taught how to deal with the emotion of disappointed. I wish I was taught to deal with the emotion of lack of self-forgiveness, so those things happen, and that ended up being quite traumatic. And then I'm like, okay, if I can't be a doctor, I guess I want to work in a hospital setting. I'll be a RD, which is registered dietitian. So I was like, okay, I will go and pursue that degree. So I came to the United States, and I was like, okay, here when I came, it was like blank slate. Life started all over again. I was super excited because I was like, okay, my parents did give me an opportunity to move to America, and they said we would finance your education, whatever you want to do. And I was like, okay, I guess not whatever. That it came with a cost, because it was like, why don't you just finish what you started? And I was like, I don't want to do nutrition. I literally either fall asleep in half my classes because I'm getting an A, it's so easy, or I am so bored that I fall asleep. So I was literally the whole time falling asleep through most of my classes. And I was like, I want to still become a doctor. Can I still consider that? And they were like, absolutely not. We sent you there for something. You're always jumping around. You need to finish what you started. And I said, this is great. So I graduated. But by the time I graduated, I absolutely didn't want anything to do with telling people what to do and what to eat and lose weight, because my mother was one of those people. She would go to a dietitian, she would lose the weight, and then she would come back and she'd be back to where she was. And I'm like, this is not working. This is what I went to school for 5 years. Like, this doesn't make sense. So that's one of the reasons I ended up picking therapy and did my grad school in mental health, because I was like, I want to study behavior behind people's, choices, as opposed to what is it that drives the behavior? What is it that stops them from that behavior? And all of that. So then I went into that path. And then when I graduated, my advisor was like, if you're going to be a therapist, you need to be on the other side of the couch for you to know and feel what it feels like for people to come and see you. And I'm like,
nice.
I don't have any issues. What are you talking about? And it took me 3-4 months to wrap my head around that. And then when I went to a psychologist, it absolutely transformed my life. And I have spent almost a decade paying that forward, because I went in there and opened a Pandora's box. I dealt with the divorce, the shame that came with the divorce that I was currently going through at that time. I dealt with sexual molestation around adolescence. I dealt with all kinds of things, like the disappointment and all the emotions that I didn't feel. And then I'm like dissociating, not feeling, or either falling apart and feeling suicidal. And I'm like, nothing is wrong with me. What is wrong with you all? So I had to deal with a lot of that. And I'm like, wow, this is great. So it was quite intense.
I'm laughing because you.
Oh, now I can. If I was in that place now, it is absolutely funny to me. The whole playfulness thing comes from the fact that if I wouldn't have been through that journey, I wouldn't be here talking about it like this.
Sure. No, I'm laughing.
This is only half of it.
I'm laughing because your lips move, yet my words are coming out. Minus the sexual molestation. That is the only thing that is not there. And a nasty divorce. But it ultimately, it is so normal. Certainly in Germany, where I grew up, there was no real. Well, if there was psychology, it was certainly poo-pooed in my family. You were strong. You were the man. That's what you do. Certain role models, certain behaviors, and it's just no one talked about the emotions. That's right, and it is. It is so harsh. It makes me cringe because I get sort of flashbacks to my youth and to my younger years where I thought, where I now think, my goodness, what would have had occurred then? Or what would have happened if I was forced to do a journey like you? To actually say, as part of my job, come on, boy, onto the couch. Now let's talk. Oh, God. Okay. This would have been very different. And guess what? It happened finally when I was in rehab. For me, I tried to numb it all. I mean,
how could you not? I mean, it is that kept you here. If you didn't numb it here, you wouldn't be here. I mean, that's our body's natural.
Exactly. I mean, Gunjani, you're a very bouncy personality now, but clearly you were in the past. You were a different girl. You were very.
Let's just say my light was it was dark. I wouldn't even put it. My light was dimmed. It was just straight up dark, and there were a few years of that. Not gonna lie, but on the other now I look back and I'm just like, wow. The Rumi quote, I really like that. It's like, wound is a place where the light enters. And I really think that if it wasn't, and now, like, I've really, in the past year and a half, taken a deep dive into my, exploration of spirituality and where I'm with those things. I look at all the things that I've been through in my life as a gift, because where I am in this exact moment is the culmination of all the things I've learned, all the things that I've become as a result of that. Back then I used to be like, oh my God, if there is God, why is this happening to me? And all that victim consciousness stuff, And I think that too had a place and time for it. I just wish I had more guidance that I have now. But I guess at the end, it all worked out. That's where I'm at. So I'm like, wow. Because in this human setting or in this human experience that we all go through, I truly, truly have come to believe that pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice, and a lot of us get stuck in that pain because we don't have the guidance. We don't have the connection with people who, we just are not resourced. And thus we get stuck in it till we decide one day to continue to work at it or look at it and get through it. And the awakening and the transcendence that comes through that process is just so beautiful.
And you're so right, because what none of us really realize until we do the work is that we have got a supercomputer up there. And that supercomputer is incredibly powerful if you ask the right questions. And if you if you know how to use the keyboard. But most of us have never been given the user manual. So here we are tapping a little bit. Oh, that feels good. What's that? Oh, that's alcohol. Oh, that feels good. Or oh, that's not nice. That's emotions. No, I don't want to go there. Or what's that? Oh, that's sex. Oh, that feels good. Can I have more of that? And it's like an infant, like a toddler. That's unfortunately the emotional level of many people, many adults that are running around out there.
Yes.
And having said that, I mean, going back to your story a bit earlier in your life, here you were in what sounds like a relatively guarded and a bit more strict environment with a focus on achievement. And then you were let loose in the United States. You said it yourself.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
Clean slate, which also means far away from mommy and daddy.
Yes.
What new personality came out there?
The playfulness, literally.
Playfulness.
All the things that I was not, and now my recent addition to my title to the whole licensed mental health thing, I as I'm expanding and rebranding, I've decided, because when I got back on social media 2 years ago, after having gone through my postpartum, I've literally shut myself off. The reason I bring that story up is because I'm in the process of now what do I want to be when I grow up? Because the next phase of the becoming the better version of myself story. And, it's just like, first I used to be this person who was always, what will people think? What will people, it was all about growing up in the culture. It was all about the people. And now in the past few years, having gone through another dip, because I really feel my life is about valleys and mountains. And after having gone through a sort of valley, I've realized that it's about, what do I want? And it's not in a narcissistic way, but I feel like we are the first relationship we have So if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves and are not connected to the love and the heart space, we show up in other relationships differently. And then it becomes, what do people want? What will people say? At this point, people's opinion can be in people's opinion, but I'm so solid in my self-regard and my alignment that people can have an opinion. That's okay, but that doesn't mean anything about my worth. But that came with a lot of work. But going back to your question, when I came to America, so now my recent title is mindful parenting coach, and I mentor parents of toddlers, break the patterns of their stress and anxiety so that they can raise calm, confident, and resilient kids. And a part of that is showing up for yourself. I was going through that myself right now. And it's like, if kids do what we do, not do what we say. So if I'm showing up angry because I'm triggered from my past that I haven't healed, because I really feel when we are in a relationship with someone, things come up. When we have kids, things come up. And when those things come up, it's like we were on our own. Life is great. Oh, you're the problem. It's so easy to say that. But the unhealed stuff from our past comes up when we are in a relationship and they're mirroring what is happening within us spiritually. So I really think that as a result of my recent dip and this toddlerhood experience, I realized there were things that needed to be healed. So when I came to America, I was just like, literally did everything that I shouldn't be doing. And it's like, because I was raised in a culture where it was like traditional parenting paradigm that do as I say, don't do as I do. And I'm not going to equip you with skills to handle your emotions because they're a big part of you. It's not just the human computer, the mind, but lately I've been into a lot of somatic work and a lot of, spiritual deep dive. So it's about our emotional body, because our body is 86 billion neurons. It's not just in the brain. All the messages that we carry, all the emotions that we carry that are not processed, not healed, they get stuck. They literally get stuck, and we operate out of those distortions. And if you're raised with, you are my object, I'm going to tell you what to do, and not overtly that harshly, but basically it's like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Well, guess what? And my sister says it really well. She's like, strict parents raise lying kids. I mean, if you don't want me to do anything, then you won't know about it, but I'll do it.
Ooh, nice.
And I'm just like, wow. So the new 2021 paradigm in modern parenting is all about letting kids be the author of their life, letting them have some control within the guidance of, I'm in this container for you. Let me guide you through this experience called life with the emotions that you're experiencing, and consciously lead you to a place where you took this soul and this human body for. Not a lot of people think that way till you get to this place where, man, stuff happened and that was difficult.
So true, isn't it? So true. And we could go so many paths on this point, but you've raised so many very valid points. I think the reality is that we all are humans. We all want pleasure. We all hate the pain, and we all are programmed at a very, very early stage in our life. And from that program come our emotions, and from those emotions come our actions. And that is something that most people don't realize. It took me a long time to get on top of my emotions, realize what emotions really are, not label them, get to know them as friends, get to know them. What is right now happening in me? Anxiety. Good. Hello, anxiety. How are you?
Yes.
That kind of a thing. And these emotions, they are beautiful, but it is, again, only the last 2-3 years that I really have understood more.
Same here.
What has caused these emotions, or what does continue to cause these emotions? Why is there anger? Why is there resentment? Why is there depression? Why is there anxiety? And so it is nowadays. I've learned to ask myself, okay, hello, you funny emotion. This is a good emotion. I like it. Why do I feel like that? Oh, okay. And this is a why am I so sad? Why am I so down today? What, but dear body, what would you like to tell me? So,
Right.
and I think that is if we can start coming around to accepting that we are a bunch of neurons and a bunch of a flood. It's like an ocean. There's huge floods and waves of neurochemicals washing over us, and it's just, and you can either like them or you can hate them. That's completely up to you. But these emotions will come, and these waves will come. So it would be nice to actually come to a point where you are becoming a perfect surfer or a sailor who reads the sea and says, "Oh, there is an interesting wave coming. Okay, it will come. I like it. I lump it. How can I deal with it? What do I do with this wave? Am I getting drowned by it, or am I surfing actually the wave? What will I do?" And
Yes.
it's so beautiful. And that this is something you have come to understand better than many others out there because you did the work on yourself. But having said that, who guided you? I mean, there was in suddenly to the United States came this quite liberated
Very, very
now.
fierce soul.
Yeah, that's right. Bring it on. Give me life now. I take it all.
It was one of
So,
those.
I
And
mean,
then
out
like
of
the
interest, out
last
of
part.
how did the alcohol came in? Did alcohol play a role for you?
Oh, big. In denial. Because I grew up in a family where we were not, especially as girls, we were not allowed to drink. We were not allowed to go out. We were not allowed to go clubbing. I grew up in a very conservative family.
Right.
I respect that, but now I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
And, it was just what it was. And when I got the freedom, I tasted a lot of it. And it with a lack of skills to work through emotions, and that has become like my recent sort of flag post. I'm literally claiming to teach people emotions now and normalizing them, because I in the past few months especially, given the trauma work that I do and all the stuff that I've been through, and the lessons came sort of in doses. It didn't all just come at once, obviously. Yeah, I don't even know. I can't even begin. I had to start with a lot of mindset work. I did a lot of EMDR trauma therapy, which taught me a lot of emotional intelligence. And now where I'm at, what you were saying really spoke to me, because I just, having been doing research on emotions quite a bit lately, my thing is emotions are not good or bad. They're just signals. We are, and as humans, we are like story making machines, and we have to have a story around everything, and we get caught up in that and stuck in it instead of just notice and identifying. So my biggest thing these days to people is pause, breathe, feel, and heal. If we don't let the thoughts go through us, they stay stuck. Then we continue to and end up in places we don't need to end up in. Unnecessary anxiety, that's what I call it. And most people don't know how to maneuver through that, unfortunately, and thus we get caught up in it. So I really appreciate shows like this and platforms like this where I can speak with people, because I think not everybody seeks mental health, and thus like the whole venture into the coaching career, because I'm like, at some point, if there are people like, man, most of my therapy people, when we work through a lot of trauma, emotions is definitely something we talk about, because emotional vocabulary is not something that we were all equipped with. We all literally have emotion vocabulary of like a toddler, literally. So, and I show up here with a whole reel of emotions for my people, and they're like, what? All the like 7 emotions are the basic emotions that people are used to, even, in their 40s, 50s, 60s. So it's like, what? And there's so much in terms of it, the emotions reaction. So most of the time I tell people, it's like, take a deep breath, just notice, name. And like you were saying, instead of asking the question, why? And I used to find myself asking that, like, why this, why that? And I used to find myself in so much agony because I asked myself why. And there is no why. You will beat yourself like to death asking yourself why. Instead, ask yourself, what is this teaching me? Become curious, become excited. What is it trying to teach you? Technically, the emotion of excitement and anxiety is physiologically felt the same in the body. We have sweaty palms, we have heart racing, we have so instead of I am anxious, don't become anxious. Stay you. I am feeling anxious. There is a part of me that is experiencing fear. There is a part of me that is experiencing sadness. Instead of attaching to that part, befriend that part and notice what it's trying to teach you. Because the emotions come up when we care about something. When we care about something, it's questioning and becoming curious, as in, what are my values related to this that are affecting me so much? And if we allow ourselves to be curious, we have the answers within us. Our body has that innate intelligence to give us the answer. We get caught up in these lower vibrating emotions such as fear, anger, shame, especially shame. A lot of us grow up with those shame messages in the first 5 years. And first 5 years sets up the trajectory for the rest of your life. So if we weren't taught emotional intelligence in the first 5 years, we don't know. It's based on, like, depending on your parent. A lot of times, depending on your parenting, it's like, how many of us actually sat and connected with our kids and taught them, you're feeling anger. Let it all out. It's okay. Let me teach you how to adaptively deal with anger. How many people do that with their kids, their 5-year-olds, their 2-year-olds, or 3-year-olds having a tantrum? So I've made it a mission of my life to make this my life's work now, because I'm so psyched, so excited. And I'm like starting with parents 2.5 to 5 years old and building like a peaceful place in their house, a little corner where parents can proactively name, see, visualize, like a series of 5 posters, like an educational tool, where you literally take time to connect with your child every day, 10 minutes, teaching them, talking them, connecting with them. What are you feeling? All feelings are allowed. Even my 3-year-old at this point, it's like sometimes I'll be crying and I'm not the person who usually cries because I had this whole vulnerability and pride thing on my shoulder. And I'm like, I don't cry. And now I'm like, if I'm going to set an example for him, I have to normalize everything that comes up for me in its rawness. And even then he comes and hugs me and he's like, Mommy, don't cry. All feelings are allowed. All emotions are welcome. And I'm like,
oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Oh,
yeah.
God. And therefore again, I feel cringeworthy because cringeworthy. Well, yeah, I am cringeworthy in this case because when I was a dad at that age, I was
You
a
didn't
mess.
know.
No, I was a mess. I was a mess emotionally, and it is just so harsh nowadays. If I just had the chance, if I guess, let's say it like this. Would I change my story with a time machine? Would I change things? Now, as far as I'm concerned, no. Because had I not gone through all the trauma, had I not gone through all the shit in my life, then I wouldn't be the man who I am now. So that's fact. So therefore, will I change it for myself? No. Would I change it for my children? Hell yes. Hell yes. Can I just have all that bloody insights that I've got now and go back and change the way I brought them up in the first 5 years? Yes. 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 And again, yes. And that is the one big regret that I've got about that. And here you are working on it, and I guess I'm working on it now. This is
I love that.
this is my book, our first children's book. This is Esme the Mindful Mouse, and little Esme is experiencing the frustrations of emotions and things like that. So that book is coming out in November, and we're working on several other children's books because I so agree with you. It is so much easier build strong young people compared with repair broken men and women for
It gives
that.
me chills. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
So therefore, we both are so aligned in the way. And before in the preamble to us coming on to show, when I asked you, well, how would you describe yourself nowadays? And you said playful, and
Yes.
that is such a beautiful thing, because I mean, guys out there, if you listen to that, when was the last time you truly played? You truly loved from your belly, that you the tears were running down your face. When
Yes.
were you the last time you were truly stupid and danced, you dance around?
Yeah.
Most of us say, "Oh yeah, I do that. I did. I think I did that about 5 years ago."
Years ago.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And then you were probably drunk. Okay, so what does that tell you? So I think I'm as guilty as charged, and so were you, because you have only just reconnected with that inner child. You found that inner child. That inner child was lost somewhere there for a long time.
And no, I think it was more that because of the trauma work or healing that I had done on myself, I knew that that inner child existed. But just like you had mentioned earlier, it's like the healing process is not a destination, it's a journey. It's like the way I tell my clients, the trauma people that I deal with, because I specialize in the mental health realm. I specialize in depression, anxiety, trauma, CPTSD, PTSD, grief, loss, and addiction. So when I'm teaching people to find their new identity as a result of having gone through the trauma, but now trying to figure out who they are post it, and where they're at in that process of who they are, one of the things we explore is, it's like I tell them overtly that it's like a healing journey is like an onion. You just have to keep peeling on the layers to really get to the core. And it's like the core is our true essence, the true inner, it's like the peace that exists within us, that stillness that exists within us, that love that exists within us, that we just have to reclaim after all the stuff that just got piled on top of it. So, when the whole playfulness thing, it's like I was telling you earlier in our conversation, that I always felt so playful as a kid. Like I had such a good childhood till preteen. And it was just so fun. And we used to just, back then, technology, so I'm not that old, but I was wise. I like to use the word wise. But, it's like in the 90s, we played out and we played with our bikes. We played hide and seek. We played catch each other. We played, those things that were just so natural and fun and grounding and nature. And it was just like, I miss those days. So actually, you said, when was the last time you played? I literally played like in 20 minutes before our conversation, because my toddler is home today, like Friday. And I decided to have a child this late in life. I didn't have him not too long ago, but I had my child in my late 30s. Because it's like in my head, given all the work that I had done for myself and the intergenerational cycles of depression and trauma that were happening in my life, I was like, I don't want to bring someone into this world knowing if I'm not ready for it, because I owe it. It's like karma, like will zap me by the end of my life. Like, how could I do that? So I was just like, no, I'm not designed to be a single mother. And B, because I had dealt with a lot of father wounds and abandonment issues and stuff. Even though my father was present, but overtly he would be like, I'm not emotional. I don't do emotions. And I'm just like, there's a reason why most of my work now is based on emotions, because I do not dismiss or invalidate that experience that I've been through. So I'm just like, how? So then since I had him this late, I'm just like, I want to have a child when I'm ready for it. And I want to have a child when the time is right and when all things align. I don't want to have a child because I have to have a child. One day I was like, if my clock stops ticking, I'll adopt a child. Way too many children in this world that could use my love. But I want to have the child for the right reasons, and not because I'm this years old, I have to get married, I have to have children, and everything that I'd seen and been through. So the playfulness came from, I had a child, and now I'm like, and having been doing all my work, and even this breathwork stuff, the recent stuff, it's just, I'm so now finally connected to those inner child parts that were there, that I had looked at, but I didn't know what to do with some parts. And I'm just like, they're there. And then I would be like, no, I'm like, let's not think about this. Let's not. And it was all about thinking. It wasn't about feeling. It wasn't about deep diving, Now I'm like, all my parts I recognize when my parts show up. I recognize when my protectors that were still showing up from my younger days as like the controller protector, the addict protector, the, aggressive protector. All of those parts very much showed up when my child was born and I was raising him. And he's 3 years, 3 months. But it's like, whew, I really had to get my act together to be like, I'm ready for this parenting thing, not just know it and know what it has done to the people I work with, to me, all that stuff. But now truly at this place, I'm like ready to make a bigger impact because I'm like all the kids in this world. And, you know, it's like parents think kids will, schools will teach it. Schools think parent will teach it. Nobody teaches it. And we all go through it. And we're in this human experience about to experience some kind of major pain. So what do we do with that pain? Like, you know, I always tell my clients that when you get a pain is inevitable. It's like emotions, not good or bad. It just is. It's information, it's data. You get a pain, in your body, you cut yourself and you're like, oh, let me just go get a Band-Aid and take care of it. You don't say, let me think, should I take care of this or should I not? And we get in our heads. We don't do that. But when it comes to psychological and emotional pain, oh, this is sadness. Oh my God, what is happening? And we, all these stories in our head. And it's like, drop in your body. Your body has the answers. We need to be able to taught skills to work through the emotions, name them, feel them, get through them, bringing our awareness to where they're present in our body and how do we bring our awareness and notice them and not get identified and stuck and lost in them. I wish I was taught that growing up.
May I just point, again, guys, so much great stuff there. One of the things that Gunjani used in a little side sentence was actually pure gold. The addict protector, the aggressive protector there. And that is such an important way of looking, or such a great way of looking at it, because your addiction is making sense to your body at that moment in time.
It was meant to keep you safe. It was meant to protect you. Yeah. In childhood, we develop these protectors because the emotional and the mental pain is so overwhelming that if we didn't have these protectors with the right tools or resources, if we didn't have those, then we wouldn't exist. So instead of disdaining it, looking at it in pure compassion and loving awareness makes that protector go away. Indeed. It was there for a reason.
Indeed.
But it's not serving you anymore. So what do you do with it?
And that's beautiful. And that's certainly the aggressive, the kind of immediately.
That was me. I used to, and then, oh my God, I felt so bad after. I felt so guilty. I felt so shameful. I felt it was so insulting. And I was like, something's got to change. Like something has got to change. What is this?
And yeah, absolutely. There were quite a few holes in my walls. In New Zealand, the walls are made of a jib, which is sort of a something that you can break with a fist. And yeah, there were quite a few holes in my walls. And that is certainly, yeah, my children remember me being angry, and therefore they learned to move away from me. And that hurts me nowadays so much that I didn't give that I couldn't control my own anger in a way. I never hurt them, but by me just being aggressive and having outbursts. These outbursts were there for a reason. And what you just said, it being protector, it gives it a chance to move away. And now me making amends and actually talking about these things and talking why those things had occurred and saying that I'm actually very sorry for the way I've behaved. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing now for me to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, technically we only have to get parenting right 20% of the time and they still turn out okay.
Then I was sailing very much on a knife edge there. I'm not sure that I get
19.75%.
Oh dear. The problem, of course, is we are all coined. We are all all what we think about parenting comes from our own parenting.
Mm.
And virtually every young person says, no, when I grow up, oh no, I will not treat my children like I've been treated, regardless what the treatment was. If it was
Yes.
too lax, too relaxed, they say, no, 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 no. We need to be more strict. And it's the other way around. So,
Exactly. It's like either you do parenting based on what you didn't want happening, or you swing completely on the opposite and say, you know what? And that's one of the reasons like why I've decided the title of mindful parenting, and my Facebook community is called mindful and consciously parenting, because I actually just made a post on this today, that how many of us as parents consciously parent? We just parent and then we're like, oh my God, they just grew up and we were so in it. They're thinking about the future, or coming from our past distortions of blowing up, or, you know, in our fight or freeze response, or whatever we've been through, because we're human. So those things are going to come up if we're triggered, if we're activated, if we're defensive. All of those things are a sign that there is some stuck emotional stuff in our systems that needs to be addressed. So if we're coming from those places, then it's like, what? How are we parenting? So the bigger question to ask is, what is my intention? If we have an intention, then we take actions that drive towards. It's like if I get out of my house and I'm just like, I'm just going to drive, I could end up in New York or Seattle or I don't know, New Zealand. I mean, where am I trying to go? But if I have a direction and intention, and I'm consciously, I want kids that are calm. I want kids that are resilient. I have to show up. I can't just say, be calm and yell at them. That's not going to work. I want independent children. I want confident children. Are you emulating everything you want? Or are you just showing up and then hoping for the best? Because that's what we all do, right? Right? My parents, I love them to pieces, but they didn't have an intention. They were just hoping and surviving through their stuff, a lot of their stuff. And a lot of this stuff is intergenerational. 50% of trauma, and addiction, and anxiety and depression were genetically predisposed from our ancestors. 40% is how parenting and all this other stuff happens, schooling and where you grow up and all that. 10% is environmental. School is not teaching emotions. We're not teaching emotions. Who is teaching it? We're all experiencing it. Some of us are completely denying it and learning the hard way. Oh, instead of saying, I'm experiencing an uncomfortable emotion, we become that emotion, and then it just takes us for a ride till we come back home in our body.
For those of you listen and thought, what? Intergenerational and depression comes from the parent? Bullshit. Actually, I'll give you an example out of my daily practice as an anesthetist. Many people absolutely hate needles, needlephobia. Now, needlephobia, we have found out that this is actually genetically handed down because 50,000 years ago, people figured out on the cave floor that if you don't get stabbed, you live longer. So, and somehow that made it really deep ingrained into our in the hardwiring
Genetics.
of us.
Yeah.
So actually, yes, whilst it might sound weird, there is actually very much something to be said. There are certain experiments where rats were exposed to electric shocks on their paws every time, and parallel to that, they smelled a certain smell. So very soon they realized when that smell came, you don't step on that metal plate because you get shocked. So that was one generation. And then this generation mice had parties and went to work, and then little rats came out. And these rats had never been exposed to the smell. But the moment they were running around, were on the metal, and that smell was whiffed through their cage, they jumped off the metal thing because genetically they had learned from their parents that that smell is not good. Okay, so if you tell me that no, what happened to my parents has nothing to do with me, well, think again.
50% is.
Yeah, so there is that is where the intergenerational issue comes in, and that's something that we keep forgetting. And that's
Oh,
something we need to keep reminding us, especially those of us who have had, quotation mark, shit parents. I had a very difficult mother. And maybe if I look back to her youth, just immediately after the Second World War, growing up in absolute mess and mayhem, her youth as it had
or
in
lack
her.
thereof.
Correct, exactly. So all those kind of things. Maybe I shouldn't be actually too surprised that there was a nasty personality disorder there, and nasty personality developing out of it due to her needs not being met. So I hate to say that because I go through these emotions or this kind of roller coaster. I should be a good son, and I should be ashamed for the way I think about my dead mother. To she was actually a real bitch. End of the story. Towards, and you go through in your life through these kind of things. I think a better way to look at it is to actually say, wow, if I had gone through so much shit as she did in her young life,
Yes.
would I not, can I not maybe understand how things panned out, regardless how I feel about it? It's more the understanding, more to see a bit.
It's the empathy piece.
Yeah, exactly.
We as humans are designed to have compassion and empathy in us till something really evil happens that it really plays a havoc. Because there's, to what you were saying earlier, there's this concept of, there are all kinds of different memories. So there's this evolutionary memory and there's this genetic memory. So when you were describing the rats incidents, it was one of those that, we carry all these things in our system. So it's 50%, and 50% of what is around us. So it's the whole nature versus nurture debate, But to your point, I really think it's important that a lot of times, and when my trauma people make peace, because forgiveness is really hard if you still have shame, pain, hurt underneath. It just is not possible. It is not, but it holds you back. It has an emotional hold on you because that resentment is not processed. And and so I have this little chart that I teach people. It's like there's this triangle, and think of a circle. There's a part of you that feels resentful, that feels anxious, that feels abandoned, that feels unlovable. The emotional need on top for that part, that all we were looking for in those times of our life when that was happening to anybody, right? Whether it was your mom or whether it's you or whether it's your children. The emotional need when that part is hurt or vulnerable or ruptured, all it's looking for is love, comfort, connection, belonging, safety in our system. It's like we always tell people that we all look to feel safe in our bodies. But if we don't feel safe, then the opposite of that is fear, anxiety, lack of control, lack of, all these things. And if those emotional needs, appreciation, validation, to be seen, to be heard, to belong, those things are what we are looking for. But if we don't get those needs met, emotional needs met, then we develop protectors, such as the addict, the aggressor, the manipulator, the victim. There's so many different protectors that show up to protect us in that childhood because we don't have the resources and the support to deal with that. So that's how we keep safe in our system. Otherwise, we wouldn't exist out of survival. So when those parts show up, the way I've started to work on it for the whole mindfulness aspect these days, quote unquote, is that when my judgment part shows up or when my inner critique shows up, I just observe them. I don't want to do anything with that. I lean back instead of leaning in. I just keep breathing, keep relaxing, and let that part work through and work itself out of my system. Because the more I feed it, it's like a good wolf and a bad wolf. If I feed the bad wolf, if I get in that judgment, at some point I'm going to start projecting that judgment on others. Who am I to judge anybody? They had their experiences. I also believe in karma. So everybody goes through their experiences. We all go through our experiences. But at this point, I'm in my life where I'm just like, my intention for my life and my lifestyle is peace. So everything is reverse engineered, my actions to get to that destination every day. Period. That doesn't mean that I have messy moments. That doesn't mean I have uncomfortable emotions. That doesn't mean that it gets riled up in our household. It all happens and it's all allowed to be here. And we show up imperfectly to the peaceful life that we, if it's 80% peaceful, I'm okay with that.
Yep. I wouldn't even give a percentage to it.
Exactly.
I appreciate every serene moment I get, every moment of insights, everything, and it's lovely to hear you being so accepting, because that is really, I guess that's one of the big hallmarks of those people who have done enough work to actually be able to deal with these waves of neurochemicals there. I would, I want to touch on two more things there in your story that intrigue me and amaze me. First thing is, we both, just before we got onto the show, one of my rituals is that I do some breathing, and you were talking the breath work, so we were both doing it naturally. But I think let's talk a little bit about the
Yes.
effect of breathing, because
Yes.
breathing is such a normal thing. I mean, for crying out loud. And to just remind you guys, in here, a little bit lower than my camera, there is a dome of a muscle. And that muscle, every time you contract it, it goes down and it sucks air in. And then it relaxes, come up, and air gets passively out. So that's what happens. And then we've got also muscles out here that lift the chest wall up and help you a little bit. But the vast majority is our diaphragm. So that's at least the way it should look like. So just a quick refresher on anatomy and physiology. That's how we breathe.
Yes.
So now let's talk breathing, however, in a healing sense. Gunjani, how when people sort of look at you and you say, "Come on, let's breathe together," and they look at you, you say, "What?"
I breathe just fine. And I'm like, emotional. We all breathe to live. And a lot of times we don't breathe. You know, when we're anxious, just catch yourself. Are you breathing? Is it shallow? Is it fast? Is it, where are you with your breath? How often do you track your breath other than anatomically and automatically? You're just supposed to involuntarily live. I mean, that is a part of one breath in, you're in this world, one breath out, you exit. But in between, how many times do you track it? Intentionally, consciously track it? We don't. So lately, my whole breathwork journey started as a result of I'm very big on manifesting and creating and being a co-creator of my life. And I was like, you know, as I was going through my journey of postpartum, and I was just coming out of my shell and sort of like out of that valley, back then I wasn't that intentional. Now I'm so much more intentional every day and very aware of that. But when I was coming out of that, I had put it out there that I wanted to have something as a part of my soul's bigger purpose on this planet. I loved what I did in terms of therapy and mental health, and I was trying to, you know, sort of work and raise mental health awareness and education and stuff around that. So I started my own podcast. I was going through my own imposter syndrome and the perfectionism and all of that. And I'm like, who am I to say anything? Who's going to listen to me? Blah, blah, blah. And all that stuff. And I was like, no, let me just face those fears. And I had heard one of Louis Howe's the School of Greatness podcast. And he's been through his story. And, you know, he was like, face your fears. Just do one thing every year that you feel fearful of. And last year it was like, I can't put myself in front of millions of people. Are you kidding? I hardly had a hard time looking at myself. Forget putting myself out there, you know? And then I was like, fine, I'm just going to face my fear and just do it. What? Nobody will listen? Fine. So I did that in November and I started my podcast. It's called Traumatic Transformations. The season 1, we got done with season 1 in May, and now I'm like revamping. So I'm like, I want to come back with the next, you know, the season 2 is more focused. But back then I was like, okay, I don't know. I'm just serving, you know, mental health, traumatic transformations. I want to help people. I want to give hope and inspiration to people who are in the shits and having a hard time having hope. And especially given the whole COVID situation, a lot of people I knew, or at least in my, mental health world, there were a lot of knock, like, I want help, I want to seek help. And that was something that I was really big on, that I wanted to foster people seeking help, because I came from the culture, the upbringing, not just my parents, but just the whole nurturing thing was, don't seek help. It's weak to seek help. Don't ask, and all that stuff. And I'm like, you have to be strong. Don't be emotional. Don't be weak, and all those things. And I'm just like, oh my God, going through it alone is just so much harder. Seeking help and having someone's guidance and mentoring through it is just wow. Back to the breathing thing, how it ties in. So the podcast led to me talking about stress and anxiety with someone, and they were like, breath work. And on the thing on the podcast or on social media, I used to hear breath work, breath work, breath work. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, I'm Indian, I breathe. I mean, I did a lot of yoga, pranayama, and all that stuff.
All right.
But is that it? So I have done meditations and stuff in my lifetime, quite like the past decade. So I was like, what is this thing that I don't know about? And then the guest that showed up, she connected me to someone, because in my head, I was like, when things are happening, I go seek EMDR therapy, and it's like taken care of in 2 sessions or 3-4 hours or whatever. And I work through it, because I'm like, I help people, but you can't hold the container and be in the container at the same time for someone. So I was like, I need to seek help. And then I was like, let me try this breathwork thing. And then I tried it. And then I signed up, like, it was the breathwork modality that I'm trained in. It's called pause breathwork. And basically, they're very trauma-informed, very intentional, very music and movement-oriented. So it's like very, like, incorporating all aspects of healing, because I know that not everybody seeks help for therapy. But I know that there are certain breath patterns that are supposed to be deeply, deeply, deeply relaxing, especially to people's systems who have been through a lot of trauma. When you are not used to, in your body, feeling safe, when you are not used to feeling calm, that to your system is very triggering, because it's like, why is it not like that all the time? So I wanted to find something that was equivalent to EMDR but better, or just as good, where there are some patterns that are used to just step-by-step safety first, just getting people's systems used to breathing, and, because there's a whole neuroscience part to it that I won't get into, because I get so psyched and it'll be like an hour talk about it. But like you were saying, the whole diaphragmatic thing, it's like when you inhale, there is a part of your brain, the brain stem. If this was a brain, this was your limbic, which is like a fight or flight, the subconscious part of your brain, the right brain, which is emotions, thinking, imagination, feelings, intuition. And then the left brain is what I was talking about earlier, the thinking, the reasoning, the decision making, the moral part of your brain. The brain stem is directly connected to, it goes through all your organs, and it connects directly to the base of your stomach. So when you inhale, if your stomach goes up, and you exhale, you empty out, you trigger parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation part of your brain. When you're used to always buzzing and stressed and fight or flight and easily anxious all the time, if you just practice 3 minutes, starting with 3 minutes. You don't even have to do more in the beginning when you're just starting out, because it's difficult. But so I found this modality that was just relaxing and also deeply transformative if you did longer. They said that if you breathe more than 8 hours continually, you get into altered states of consciousness. And I have experienced that myself. So I was like, wow, because you have to tap into your subconscious. A lot of mindset work, I think, it pauses because it's obviously meant to keep us safe and it protects. So it's like instead of being in our awake state, we go deeper, bypass the ego. So we're not trying to say, oh, I'm not going to think or feel this. We just get into those deep states of relaxation and unload, unleash, just release all these emotionality that we're holding on to, that we won't allow ourselves to go to out of protection through just mindset or cognitive work. So when you're breathing, you're just sitting and breathing. Your body has this innate intelligence within it, this wisdom that is there. But if we don't allow ourselves to consciously get to it because of our mind, which is meant to protect us. But so with this breathing, I was just literally, it was 3 months of 20-minute short sessions of just deeply integrative work, that in itself was so powerful. And then these hour-long breathing meditations that were much deeper work was transformative. I went in there like, hi guys, like I feel great. Like, yeah, I know I'm here. And I came out roaring like, yes, I'm here and I need to be seen and I feel seen, heard, and supported. And I'm willing to offer that support to everyone that comes my path and is committed to that level of healing.
Indeed. And that is powerful, and that is it sounds like hocus pocus, yet it is actually so true. It's so powerful. Everyone who goes under this journey and really truly learns how to breathe, it is happening. And it's not a wishy-washy kind of concept. If I take a knife and actually cut you apart and look inside, there is this vagus nerve that is coming from the brainstem, running down the center of your chest, and it's basically going through the diaphragm. So here we are, by actually breathing deep, there is a direct stimulation of this vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is actually the parasympathetic nervous system. So fight and flight is sympathetic, parasympathetic is the relaxation, the calming down. So here we have got a direct link from here to there, okay? So
and it's a self-healing tool. We don't have to pay for it. We all own it. If we only knew how to do it. That's the biggest thing. You don't need me for the rest of my life, for your life, to learn how to breathe. Like once I learned, I'm on my own. Now I just certified and I'm a facilitator. But in the beginning, I needed that support. I needed that help. I needed that someone holding the container and guiding me through it, because otherwise my mind would get in the way. But now every minute, every day, I have to 10 minutes a day, if not less, sit and breathe, release everything. So I wasn't going into the next day with that junk from yesterday. It just will not happen anymore.
Oh, Gunjani, so many beautiful, beautiful truths you have touched upon today. So honestly, Gunjani, I mean, if you did, you really opened a few windows in my brain to let some fresh air into some nooks and crannies there to actually say, yeah. So I was blessed because I was on a similar journey as you, yet again, life has overtaken me a bit. I've become very busy. Have I done the basics? Did I actually do some meditations and breathing works recently? Yeah, nah. So
We wait till we don't, right? We just sometimes get very complacent. That's life, but that's why we connect to people in communities that are like, okay, tap tap.
Exactly. So I'm so grateful that you reminded me on what I need to do is to look after myself. So that's so great. Gunjani, if people liked what they heard today, how can they get hold of you?
So this time, finally, because of this interview, I think I got my act together because I was on pause on social media. I'm like, wait a second, I'm still rebranding. I don't know. So I used to be called G Patel Counseling. That was my website. The website is still under construction. That is soon to come because, like I said, I was really just focusing on therapy. Yeah. And then this breathwork and coaching world opened up because I was like, I want to serve more people. I want to do more. I have a bigger impact to make on this planet before I exit. We don't know when that is, but in the meantime, I don't want to regret when it's there. So I figured, okay, so I rebranded to this company called Consciously Living. Healing, the consciously healing part is the therapy part. The consciously creating is the consciously creating the parenting experience you need to create so you don't regret later. And the consciously awakening is the breathwork part, which is how can you use tools every day to live in your alignment, live in your clarity, so that you're not living out of what people told you should be or what you thought people think about you. All of that stuff that almost made you forget, and just the playful, the love, the safe, beautiful, supported human being that you are.
Beautiful.
That's how babies are. We forget along the way.
So true. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube and of the podcast because I've put Gunjani's details in there. So no difficulty for you finding her. And whilst you're down there, please press the subscribe button And whilst you're
Yes.
pressing subscribe, make that mental note of saying, hey, this was actually a pretty cool show. Why don't I tell my friends about it? And so go out there, spread the word about Gunjani's podcast, about her healing work that she does, and maybe that might be something for you guys to look into and contact her. Or you might say, well, actually, there is let's how about or. And so go to Gunjani and go to my work, check it out, because we come from all sides to look at trauma through the various lenses that my guests bring about and or bring up, and these lenses could be from a more healing point of view, the breath work, etc., or it could be more to look at the trauma in its own right and the lessons that people learn from that. So there is not one path that will suit everyone. So
Right.
therefore, expose yourself. Go imagine all those things that we're doing, that the healing, that all those things, imagine that as flavors of ice cream. And
Yes.
there's a hot summer's day and you are standing in front of a beautiful cornucopia of ice cream everywhere. And why don't you taste a few, okay? Why don't you actually see what happens when you learn how to breathe? What happens with EMDR? What happens with other things? And explore. And some things you might say, oh, they don't taste very well. And others you might say, yes, I want more of that. Hey,
Yes.
this is how I want you guys to look at life. Trauma is a given. You can't do anything about it. But how you deal with it, that
Yeah.
is your choice. So no, that's good. Gunjani, you're a gorgeous guest. Thank you so much for coming onto my show. You really, 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 honestly, you really brought fresh air going through some of those nooks and crannies. And I'm excited to go on more of a meandering path in my own healing.
Yes.
Because there is so much more to learn. There's so much more to grow into. So who do I want to be when I grow up? I don't know yet. I'm working on it. I'm working.
Curiosity is the key
Yeah,
to healing. It is literally we get to explore, we get to be curious, we get to just show up. So what if?
that's
What
absolutely
if
right.
I was willing?
Oh, Gunjani, thank you so much for coming onto my show. And you guys out there, look after yourself. Stay strong. Don't give up hope. There is hope out there. And, I believe in you guys. And look after yourself.
Yes, yes, yes.
Bye.
Dream on.